Richard Pryor is considered one of the greatest stand-up comics of all time, which puts him on the short list of the funniest people to ever walk the earth. Comedy Central named him the best stand-up of all time. So did Rolling Stone. Jerry Seinfeld called him the Picasso of our profession. Dave Chappelle said that he was the highest evolution of comedy. He won an Emmy, 5 Grammys, a Writers Guild Award for Best Original Screenplay, and he was the first ever recipient of the Mark Twain Prize for American Humor. His too crazy to be true life story marks him as one of the most significant entertainers not to have a Hollywood biopic. And somewhere near the bottom of the canyon that marks his life's many achievements, you'll find a weird outlier in his otherwise towering career. Richard Pryor was the star of Superman 3. Welcome to Superhero Cinema Club, an in-depth exploration of the history of comic book movies. I'm your host, Mark Schiff, and with me as always is the Lorelei Ambrosia to my Ross Webster. It's Mike Carnes.
Hey, thank you. I like that comparison because I do consider myself secretly smart.
Not only secretly smart, you are unbelievably hot, Mike, and you're always showing off your cleavage, stopping traffic when you're going across the street.
I have a lot of onesie kind of jumpsuits that have a big belt across the middle and unzip down to my belly button.
The ski outfit alone is just, you're wearing it right now. You can't see this on video. You look amazing, Mike. I've never really talked about it. We'll take this off mic, actually. But yeah, I felt that this was a particularly appropriate introduction to my sexy co-host.
It's good attire just to wear around the house. It's really comfy.
There we go. For the people who caught all of those references, today we're going to be discussing Superman 3. You can now watch this film on Max streaming app. This podcast is definitely best enjoyed if you have a fresh memory of the film, so we encourage you to watch it this very second if you have not yet seen it or it's been a while. Welcome back to those who just watched Superman 3. We will give our final verdict at the end of the show, but if you're like us, you might have had a couple issues with the film. Mike, the first 3 episodes of this podcast have covered 3 movies that, in our opinion, ranged from classic to okay, leaning good. And now we're at Superman 3, and I don't think it's a spoiler to say it's probably not going to reach those echelons. A lot to talk about in this film, but let's start with this. Richard Pryor portrays a preternaturally gifted computer programmer named Gus Gorman. His overall story arc is slightly confusing, but I do think it's worth pondering the question, Mike. Was Gus Gorman a villain?
I mean, his initial instinct as soon as he gets a job is, how can I con this company out of fractions of a cent and make money that doesn't belong to me and steal from this company? I mean, that's, as we know, famously referenced in Office Space, and Jennifer Aniston is like, okay, how is that not stealing? How is what you're doing not a crime? How is what he's doing the origin of this, I think it's called meat slicing or deli slicing, this particular crime? How is it not a crime? Like, he's immediately committing crime as soon as he is able to and has the capability to. He then spends the rest of the movie in the pocket of the, we'll just call him not Lex Luthor because I don't remember the character's name off the top of my head, Robert Vaughn's character, but
Ross Webster, Mike.
Ross Webster. Thank you, thank you. I it's been a few
Very
days since I watched the
memorable.
movie.
Yeah, huge. Just what an impression that character made to all of America and DC Comics going forward. But please continue.
I think that, we can talk about this later where the what's it really about section, but he's got his whole speech about how like the system is basically rigged against someone like him. And it's like, yeah, that's true, but also your nature as a character is to immediately commit a crime. And I think yes, he's a villain. I would put him in the he might end up in the Superman Rogues Gallery of villains for villains that feature in the cinematic movies.
Interesting. Yeah, I wouldn't maybe quite go that far. I would go with soft villain. Every so often in comic book films, you encounter a character who behaves villainously and then has kind of a redemption at the end, and I would certainly say that applies to Gus Gorman. However, I mean, he unleashed an absolute weather catastrophe on the South American nation of Colombia, all because of his bosses thinks he is responsible for just a lot of misery when it comes to oil and gas prices and the violence that, occurred as a result, which we saw firsthand. Shocking violence, Mike, at the gas pumps. Men getting pulled out of cars and beaten down.
All in the name of coffee beans, right?
Well, the oil scheme was separate from the coffee bean
That
scheme.
came later. The coffee
Yeah.
scheme was first, which was the hurricane.
Yeah. I mean, unleashing environmental catastrophe upon an impoverished South American nation so that you can get a little more rich on coffee. Eh,
Was that real hurricane footage? Because there were a couple of shots that looked like there was like a building rolling over on its side, like it was like a giant barn or something. I had to stop and question, like, oh, did they just take real footage and splice it into the movie?
Yeah, I believe that all of the footage of Superman is was shot practically. So Christopher Reeve was actually flying in this film, and the hurricane footage was of him, actually pushing back the inverse tornado. I may be
Wow,
wrong. I don't know. I
amazing.
saw that on Wikipedia or something, but yeah, apparently they used a computer actually to enhance Christopher Reeve, like personally, so that he could do all of his own stunts, including flying in this film. So computers are
Well,
that powerful, Mike.
if there's one thing this movie taught me is that computers can literally do anything, including hacking into a satellite that somehow can cause a hurricane
I mean, how many
in
times
Colombia.
has this happened since this movie was released? I feel like it was like warning us, like, look out for the weather satellites because the in the wrong hands, and like here we are. We all know who's controlling them, or at least Marjorie Taylor Greene does. So
I was about to say this is the origin story for Marjorie Taylor Greene.
she saw this movie and was like, "Oh, it all makes sense now." All right. Well, we'll get into it. As always, we like to start off with what we call the Tale of the Cape. This is the section where we discuss the movie's release and success in the box office and behind the scenes. So, Superman 3 was released on June 17th, 1983 in the US. Unlike the other two films that were among the most successful of the year and really of all time, Superman 3 made $80.2 million globally. Here in America, it was only the 11th highest grossing movie of that year, sandwiched in between, I would say, two classic comedies, National Lampoon's Vacation at number 10 and the Eddie Murphy film vehicle 48 Hours at 11, which coincidentally co-starred Annette O'Toole. How about that? Now, they had a lot of the same crew that worked on the first two Superman movies, making Superman 3. Richard Lester, who was the director who replaced Richard Donner in the director's chair, was back as director. Co-writers of the first two films, David and Leslie Newman, are credited with the script. This one, Mike, I thought was interesting because, as we discussed in our first podcast, John Williams actually lost the Oscar for Best Original Score to Giorgio Moroder. Moroder. I always have a hard time saying his name. I love the dude, Giorgio Moroder, and they actually hired him to add a little of that '80s synth pop flavor that was becoming all the rage to the Superman soundtrack. So, if you listen to the soundtrack on Spotify, the second half, the B side of the record, is all songs that were produced by Giorgio Moroder and were used diegetically. I finally got to use that word on our podcast.
Nicely
Used
done.
di Yeah, thank you. Used diegetically in the film. Mike, I actually gave that record a spin today, and let me tell you, these songs are absolutely terrible. The worst offender of which is his just Moog version of the Superman theme. He doesn't change the arrangement. There's no like disco beat. It just literally sounds like the John Williams theme, except it's played on like a Casio synthesizer, and it is really bad. That being said, the Chaka Khan song that takes place in briefly in a scene with Richard Pryor when he's driving his new Ferrari, which we'll get to, is a little bit of a banger. That's like a minor banger. The rest absolute trash. It was actually nominated for worst soundtrack at the Razzies, along with Richard Pryor himself. Who's to blame for this catastrophe, according to the Razzies? That would be producing partners Ilya Salkind and Pierre Spangler. They are back as producers. They have removed Richard Donner and his meddling goodness from the equation. And when you take out a really talented filmmaker and you finally get your way, apparently this was their pure vision of what Superman should be. Really just a slapstick comedy in a lot of respects. Unfortunately, Mike, there really weren't a lot of great jokes in this movie. Now, I made notes because I did laugh approximately 3 times in the movie. Would you like to hear, in my opinion, the 3 good jokes?
Absolutely.
The first joke actually takes place during the opening credits montage, which I actually kind of enjoyed. The Rube Goldberg, one thing leads to another. I took extensive notes on what all goes down. So your namesake, Lorelei Ambrosia, walks by, which causes a guy to walk into a post, then fall over and knock over a table of mechanical stuffed penguins, which causes a roller skater to run into a hot dog cart, which tips over a line of telephone booths, which causes a dog to escape, which causes a seeing eye dog to chase it, which causes a blind man to mistakenly grab the street lane painting cart, which causes the original oogler to fall into a construction hole, and eventually Superman to have to rescue a man from a car filled with water.
How long did you take mapping all that out?
Well, not too long, fortunately, because the sequence is relatively short, but one of those one small thing leads to another thing, leads to another things. The setup is good. It should be good physical comedy. This is the thing about the movie. There's a bunch of setups that you would think would be good, but so this is a great example. Halfway through this whole long sequence, there is a bank robbery that takes place, and
Yeah,
the guy is running off. A cop is chasing him, and then literally, like, that's nothing comes of that. Like, you would think that Superman would save the guy from the drowning car, which is kind of a cool stunt because the car itself is actually filled with water and he does pull him out. But then you'd think there would be like a shot of him being like, I can hear the burglar, laughing about, oh, I got away with it. I can't believe it. And then he flies over there, and or like it comes full circle, and like the penguin, he's like, just when I get away with it, like one of the flaming penguins, like nothing. He just gets away with a robbery, and
they
a
completely
very
forgot about it with all the other shenanigans going on.
that's the thing. They just there's all this setup and no payoff, and I think that is a excellent metaphor for the film itself. So that being said, there is one of the 3 jokes I really enjoyed in this sequence, Mike. When because the phone booths are knocked over, Superman is forced to change in one of the little photo booths. He goes in, he changes his costume. It prints out the photos, and the first 3 show him as Clark Kent switching into the Superman outfit. He tears it off and gives it to the little kid. That was a good joke. I laughed at that.
Yeah, that was pretty good. Not a bad gag at all.
The second good joke in the film, you've already alluded to, is when they do a scene, like a cut to a new scene, and it's Lorelei reading the philosophy book Critique of Pure Reason by Immanuel Kant, and she says something about, I don't know, like objective reality or something. That was a good joke.
Yeah, I agree. Now that I'm like reliving these moments with you, I'm even chuckling to myself, like, oh yeah, that was pretty good. So
That was, yeah, good jokes. The last good joke at the end of the movie, Richard Pryor, after being accused of being a villain, says, "Hey, man," and then Lorelei says to him, "That's only his last name. He likes to be called Superman." Little bit of a groaner. I still kind of enjoyed it. I did not mind that one either.
yeah, that one was very punny, I think. Also, that scene, Richard Pryor opens his shirt like he would be revealing an S,
That's later,
indicating.
actually.
Is it
That's later,
later?
but
Okay.
yeah, it's at the very
May-
end.
Maybe we'll save that for I got questions then. But
Yeah, we'll save that one. All right. So,
also, real quick,
yeah,
the car filling with water is like such an easy solve. You just roll down the window. Like, what the heck? I don't understand why this guy is in danger of drowning.
the door handle broke, Mike.
Oh, it
How are
did?
you supposed to roll down your window when your door handle to the outside door is broken?
There's three other window handles in the car. You can easily roll down one of those. I was like, great. He has to save this idiot from drowning in his car, but he can't stop a bank robber at the same time. Okay.
Is this not just Darwin's law getting someone off the streets that has no business operating a motor vehicle? I mean, come on. He got
I'm an
into an
angry driver.
accident.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, come on. Fair enough. Well, that's really all we're going to talk about for that section. Let's just move right on into the categories as we like to do every week, starting with best action scene. All right, so we'll go through these one by one. Chemical plant fire is really not water rescue notwithstanding. Chemical plant fire is the first big action set piece. Mike, I'm not going to lie, I enjoyed it. I thought this was actually pretty well executed. I like that Jimmy Olsen, after kind of being sidelined to the Daily Planet office in the first two Superman films, got a little bit to do here and is, told by his boss back at the building that I need to go out and take more photos. Accidentally gets himself caught up in the middle of some stuff, thinks that Clark won't, of course, cower in terror because being the sheepish, nerdy man that Clark Kent is, he wants nothing to do with the chemical fire. Then, Superman comes in, does his thing. Now, I hear tell that some people have criticized the sequence. Why not use your ice breath on the specific parts of the fire? Why do you need to go to a whole lake, freeze that, lift the lake itself into the air, and then drop it? I had that initial thought myself. However, the lake size will disperse over the entire fire, putting it out in one fell swoop. I know there is a sense of urgency there because they're talking about chemical gas that could kill the entire eastern seaboard. However, on deep consideration here, I do think that he made the right choice in terms of his tactics. Mike, what are your thoughts?
That was my question the entire time. Why doesn't he just go around and use his ice breath? We've seen him do it already in these movies. We know he can do it. I think we're reaching here for why for his tactics or things like that. I think they just wanted to do something different, I guess. I was frustrated at the scene with no end. This is not my best action scene.
That was concerning to me. I really can't help but think about, again, the ecological devastation to that pond that's no longer, there's no fish. Think about how many fish died in the chemical plant put out when he could have used his ice breath. I do understand that. But again, I do think at the end of the day, if you're just trying to put it all out in one fell swoop, just freeze a whole lake, drop it from a high distance, it'll melt above the flame and put everything out. I kind of admire it personally.
Yes, a slow drizzle is definitely what you want to put out an urgent chemical fire. I agree.
Next up, the Thresher rescue. So he's out on a date with Lana Lang. We'll talk about her here in a little bit. Her son, Ricky, playing with the dog out in the field as a child does. This is where I get really frustrated, Mike. Apparently, little Ricky had tripped at some point and cracked his head on a rock, necessitating his rescue. They never showed little Ricky tripping and falling and hitting his head. They're just, oh, Ricky's going off with his dog. Have a little thing. Oh no, my car's leaking oil. What am I going to do? And then suddenly he's, oh, I guess I got to go save little Ricky. Give us a shot of Ricky. All you got to do is just the kid tripping over, a little stone and then knocking his head. I ran it back multiple times to be like, did I miss the point where little Ricky gets hurt? They just don't show it. What's going on with that? Come on.
Yeah, I thought he was just like taking a nap in the way of the thresher.
No,
I
his
was
head.
super confused as well.
I mean, I'm pretty sure I saw blood. Like I think they show his head resting on a rock and with a little bit of blood. What are we doing, filmmakers? This is basic stuff. You got to set up the fact that he needs rescuing. Otherwise, he's just like, I'm wandering off, and I guess I'm going to go. Rescue Rick. I mean, come on, man.
Yeah, you were talking about setup with no payoff. This is payoff with no setup.
Oh, well said. Well said, sir. Yes, Thresher Rescue is not going to make my favorite action scene either. Next up, this is a stretch because quite honestly, there is a shocking amount of or like deficit of action in this movie. There is a lot of Richard Pryor and Gus Gorman, and there is not a whole lot of action. So I went ahead and am including this, even though it's not really an action scene. I'm calling this one the Jerk Superman montage of unhelpfulness. So Superman is given some fake kryptonite. This, as we know, doesn't, I think canonically he's referred to as evil Superman at this stretch. He's not really evil, okay? Evil is a very strong word. He just acts like a jerk. He's just a jerk.
He's just a
So,
jerk.
yeah, I'm just calling him Jerk Superman. I don't want to cast aspersions of evil on such a heroic figure, no matter how bad he is in this part. Mike, I'm going to give you a list of what Jerk Superman does. I want you to identify what you find as the most jerky behavior from Jerk Superman. He immediately starts giving Lana Lang some kind of date rape energy. He says, "It's unusual finding a good looking girl like you alone like this." Whoa, whoa, bro. What does that mean? Like alone like this? Like I understand, like if he says you're single, like where's your boyfriend? You should be with a guy. Alone like this implies there's no one here to see me do
Yeah,
some, you know,
she's vulnerable. Yeah, and he
yeah,
he calls it out.
yeah, really kind of upset me, frankly. Don't like that, jerk Superman. Next up, I mean, again, this is just jerkish behavior. And one of them, arguably, is not even really jerkish. He straightens out the Leaning Tower of Pisa. This is a monument that famously has been leaning for a long time, and it obviously upsets the guy that's making the souvenirs, and it ruins his whole day. And they spend so much time with this one character that's,
His
you
whole
know,
livelihood is
I
devoted
mean,
to, to selling miniature models.
like, again, we'll get into the themes of this film, and certainly the working class struggles is one of them. However, I mean, come on, dude. Like you're probably famous now. I was there when I saw him do it. It was Superman. Like you got a whole story. You can write a book about it, maybe. If that's your deal, figure else something else out. That's tower is now straight, and the world can finally be at peace. I guess the Olympic torch thing is that's just a jerk move. You know, I actually did note 970 miles, Mike. They note that the flame has traveled to get to the final, you know, we're finally going to light the full Olympic torch. And he's just, and what really perturbed me, Mike, he yawns. Like he's like bored. I'm bored. Might as well just blow it out. Real jerkish behavior there.
I mean, there's 300 people in attendance at the Summer Olympics in Topeka, Kansas at this point.
Yeah, exactly. Is that it's in Smallville? They're holding the Olympics in Smallville? Okay. All right.
Yeah, seriously.
I think this category we'll just call basic hygiene. He doesn't shave. His suit gets kind of grimy, looks a little Brandon Routhish. I'm sorry, Brandon Ruth. Gets a little of that
Oh,
teal
shots
and
fired.
maroon. It's no shots. We learned in our last
We
podcast it's
did learn.
pronounced Ruth. I always want to say Routh because I'm an idiot. But yeah, it looks a little Superman Returnsy, and frankly, I think it's kind of a good look. I mean, the stubble. I mean, he's not a bad looking guy when he's a little more unshaven. I don't know.
It took me a bit to notice that the suit was darker, but then I was like, oh, that's actually a cool little piece of attention to detail there. I like that it was like faded, and once he switches
Yeah.
back, the colors really popped off of him.
Yeah, that's true. That was like one of those subtle production design choices that I will give credit for. Next up, cause an oil spill. That's just unequivocally that it does border on evil. I mean, that's a real environmental catastrophe among many in this film. On a moral level, I was upset by the fact that he appeared to have sexual intercourse with a woman before marrying her. I mean, I assume at some point in his life, Superman, and we discussed this in depth on our Superman Returns episode. But yes, Superman does make love to women. That's okay, and apparently he can't impregnate them, even though he's an alien. Nevertheless, this is just a kind of a tart, Mike. I'm gonna go ahead and call Lorelai a tart, and he just falls into prey to her, rescuing her from the Statue of Liberty. Something he says, "I don't do that anymore. I don't rescue people anymore, babe." Then causes an oil spill and makes presumably sweet love to this woman. Didn't like it. They weren't married. They had no real previous relationship. I was very upset. What did you think?
I was gonna save this for later, but I can go into it now. Whether he's Clark or Superman or evil Superman, Christopher Reeve spends a lot of time in this movie just trying to get laid. He's spending a lot of time going on dates with Lana Lang, going to her house for dinner as Superman. He's saving her child multiple times, like singling out this one child that's in distress in the world. As we've discussed, Superman's entire battleground is the world, not just America. So why is he just going, helping this one small family that he knows personally, other than just he's trying to get laid? He then, to your point, has premarital relations, which at the end of I'm gonna jump ahead. At the end of the movie, you definitely would get canceled for a move like this today. She's like, "Well, what about last night? Sorry, babe. Even though he's no longer jerk Superman. Sorry, babe. That wasn't me."
He doesn't apologize, actually, Mike. I clocked it on rewatch. He never says he's sorry. He says that man doesn't exist anymore. It's just, you know, uh,
Let me call you an
Superman.
Uber. That man doesn't exist anymore. I'm gonna ship you home.
You're right. That would get Superman rightfully canceled, I would say. You got to show some contrition there, dude. Like, I'm sorry. I was not in my right mind. I know that's no excuse, but I sincerely, I feel badly, and I don't want you to think that I'm that man. I'm a better person than that. Please fall
Nah,
in love with
babe.
this.
That ain't
Nope,
me.
that man doesn't exist anymore. He doesn't use the B word. That's my addition. But yeah, I clocked how callous he was at that. And then lastly, Jerk Superman. He gets drunk on Johnny Walker Red. It's a very noticeable bottle. Now, I respect that, frankly. Day drinking Johnny Walker Red, I can get behind that behavior. That is not
He's
Jerk Superman at all.
he's
The
got
problem
class.
is he then starts, and this is a real problem, and people, I hate it when they do this stuff, starts flicking the peanuts at the bottle and then obviously smashing them. The thing that the cherry on top of this scene is that he sees his reflection in the mirror and is so disgusted with himself and filled with self-loathing that he turns his laser vision on to warp the mirror. It's like, I can't even stand to look at myself. What have I become? I thought that part was pretty cool. The crowd of people outside just kind of harumphing and getting upset at him was, I thought, kind of a nice touch. And of course, little Ricky's pleas, like, this isn't you, Superman. You'll be all right. It's not you, Superman. I mean, powerful stuff. That's really the only word I can use, Mike. Powerful.
Again, good production design. The way that the mirror kind of warped with his laser vision, I was like, oh, that actually looks really good today, even still. I don't know. I kind of like the flicking the peanuts is like, oh, well, he's unhinged. My God, he's flicking peanuts. What won't this man do? But the seeing the distorted image of his own self, I thought was quite poetic for the time for a movie that's missed many marks at this point. It didn't miss that mark.
Which of these horrendous actions is the worst from Jerk Superman?
Ruining an entire Summer Olympics game for everybody would definitely affect the majority of the world, I think. But yeah, I definitely felt the sense of disgust when he's like trying to take advantage of Lana Lang all alone in her own house. So I'm gonna go with that.
For me, it's the premarital sex. I can't believe Superman would. I don't want to talk about it. I'm pretty upset by all
Oh
of it.
wow,
I
okay.
mean, just put a ring on it first. We get it, okay? So the next action scene is the big fight we've all been waiting for. Jerk Superman versus Clark Kent in a junkyard. The ideal place for these two. I can see you're excited. Why don't you go off, Queen? Tell us about it.
I thought this was legitimately the best scene in the movie. I was once they started going into this, I was like, okay, things are interesting now. We talked about it with Superman too, but I get really bored when Superman deals with like geopolitics or things that have to do with business, which is what Lex Luthor is all about. And I'm really more interested in him fighting someone on his own level, like the Kryptonians, or in this case, an evil version of himself. And to me, this is like the closest that we've got on screen to Superman fighting Bizarro that I think we've ever seen. We have yet to see a live action version of Bizarro, and so seeing like Superman good versus distorted image of Superman fighting on an even playing field was really fun to me. There was a lot of great stuff with him like being crushed in the car compactor and then busting out through the wall of that thing. It looked great. Nothing looks like super fake of him coming through like a cardboard wall or something like that. My only question is, why is there a giant vat of acid in the middle of a junkyard? That's something I don't
It's a
think
good.
is stock to junkyards across the country. But I also was like, I don't know if this is happening in his mind or if it's, you know, if the synthetic kryptonite somehow physically caused him to split from his own self, and so then he had to murder his own self, which is apparently how you become good again, is just by killing the evil version within your own heart or something. I think that's what they were going for.
Well,
Um,
that it actually is an interesting question because initially, apparently, this they had wanted to maybe call this Superman versus Superman and kind of market it on this big set piece. They obviously didn't go that route and ended up, with the more generic title Superman 3, but that this was really the setup. And I think there's a compelling argument in so much as when Jerk Superman is finally defeated, he just disappears, right? He doesn't actually leave a body behind. And I think the generous artistic interpretation of that is that he had to learn to fully assimilate the two sides of himself to become good Superman once again. He never turned back to Clark Kent once he became Jerk Superman. He was just only Superman. And I think, if anything, was kind of bored by his powers and then therefore just starts pulling pranks and having premarital sex with women and just indulging in his most lurid fantasies when he can integrate the goodness of him into the Superman body, or more accurately, integrate the Superman body into the good part of him, then he can once again resume his hero's journey.
was
That
it,
is,
do you think they might have been saying like this is Superman without Clark? And so
yeah,
Clark had to, the two beings had to merge into one to create the Superman that we all know and love. Like Superman without Clark doesn't really exist because Superman needs the wholesomeness and the innocence of Clark Kent to retain his own wholesomeness and innocence.
I think that's a beautiful read on it, Mike. I think we are being incredibly generous to put that much weight into. However, that is the nature of our podcast, and we will get even deeper as this episode rolls on. So, our final, I kind of split these almost into two action scenes. They sort of are, but they're really one big action extravaganza at the end. They give you so little action in this movie. It's just the last 30 minutes are basically nonstop. So we'll split it into two: Canyon Attack and then the Ultimate Computer Showdown. Now, Canyon Attack to me was like hilarious because they do this a few times in the movie where instead of showing what's going on as far as Superman doing something cool, they just have either a character explain what he did or they cut to a computer graphic of what they're seeing of him dodging missiles in like 1983 computer graphics. Hilarious stuff for me. Just the inability to actually stage a what should be ostensibly like a really cool. I mean, I know that it was difficult at the time, but Superman dodging missiles in a canyon is, in theory, a sick set piece. And instead, we literally just get bad graphics of Superman and like little rockets coming at him. It was so bad, it was cracking me up, frankly.
Yeah, it looks like a NES game that they're just controlling. I was going to point that out earlier too. Like you were talking about the lack of action in this movie, and yeah, like we get a whole scene where Gus Gorman, Richard Pryor, just describes what Superman did instead. of actually showing us what he did. And the only thing I could think was budget. Like they just ran out of money and couldn't do it or whatever.
100%. Now, Ultimate Computer Showdown. Is this your favorite, Mike? Is that what you were alluding to, or is it Missile Attack?
No, it's not. So Ultimate Computer Showdown is super weird. Has a lot of things that happen that I don't, again, what do they think that computers can do in 1983? Is it just computers are so new to the scene that they're just like, we can literally have a computer already thinking in terms of them being like awake, conscious, and want to take over the body of a human. Like this is far-reaching sci-fi stuff that they're already implementing into this movie for the masses and assimilating the body of Robert Vaughn's sister. So I don't know. That was really strange. But no, no, I
Okay,
don't think this is the best scene. I think the Junkyard Showdown is the best scene.
for me, the Ultimate Computer Showdown is actually the best scene in the action as far as this movie goes. It's just so ridiculous and over the top. I mean, none of it really makes a whole lot of sense, just in terms of his battle tactics or, to your point, like how powerful computers can be. It's utterly absurd, and it's actually maybe to me the funniest part of the movie overall, albeit none of the laughs are necessarily super intentional in this part. I was just having a great time watching the computer just turn this woman into like a zombie computer, which he pretty easily dispatches with her, which I thought was kind of unfortunate. I would have liked to have seen those two go at it. I also would throw this out as a really awesome deep cut Comic Con cosplay opportunity for the
Oh
ladies
yeah,
out there,
sure.
right? I mean, it's a deep cut and no one's favorite character in the Superman films, but man, if you could pull that off, ladies, that would be just an incredible outfit to cosplay in.
I don't understand in this scene, why is it that the entire mega structure of this computer can be turned off just by unscrewing one screw with by hand, no less, not even with a screwdriver, right? He just kind of unscrews it and that shuts the whole thing down. Seems like a design flaw that a thinking machine, self-aware machine would be able to avoid.
That is a great point. One of many little unbelievable errors or self-inflicted errors. Nevertheless, to me, I did kind of rather enjoy the Ultimate Computer Showdown. That's my pick. You're going with Junkyard Showdown. Appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
Mike, it's really hard to pick a best non-action scene out of this movie. I'm not sure that we need to necessarily. There's just way too much Smallville class reunion stuff, a lot of that. However, you've already said a couple nice things. I have a couple nice things I'd like to say here. So we'll just do this real quick. I thought that some of the practical flying effects in this film were much better than the first two, especially his takeoffs and landings. There's a couple different shots where he lands from flying where it really looks like someone who has been flying landing because he's kind of like jogs into a run when he comes down. I feel like now when we watch superhero movies, they just kind of hover and then just perfectly land. Where it's like, no, you're coming down kind of quick. You would like kind of come into a run. Even at the very last shot when he drops Richard Pryor off at the coal mine, he's got him in his arms and then he kind of like lands running. Like it looks pretty cool and like realistic. I enjoyed that. I also, for a really bad and forgettable character, will give Ross Webster a lot of credit for his slick, all gray 80s looking office. I actually thought it looked like pretty awesome. The penthouse ski slope, get out of here, Ross Webster. You are the man. That was looks very short and almost like not worth the effort to have, that little of ski course as a skier. I'm like, I would be very frustrated that the rope pull would probably take twice as long as going down the hill. But I mean,
The
it's
ski slope is
still
definitely dope for sure.
really sick to have a little ski slope on the top of your skyscraper. And I also really liked how he had the sort of hidden map underneath his water fountain. He had the secret bar behind his bookshelf, which was dope, and then the secret map of the world where all the oil tankers are apparently going to be underneath his water fountain.
Yeah, did
Just
you
really,
notice the water fountain was like spraying the carpet as it went down though, as it turned over? Seems like a
you got to
not
think
very
about that
practical.
part. Yeah, come on,
And then I
Ross.
liked as soon as he turned it over, they turned to the wall and they hit another button and the wall opens up to reveal another map. I was like, oh, he's got two secret maps hidden in his condo here, apparently.
Like the guy loved maps. I mean, I can't blame him. He's a rich sophisticate. So I think one other thing I will say, you've sort of alluded to it, but you could make a case that this movie did kind of predict the future around computing to a certain extent. There's a couple lines. Well, the company itself is called Websco after their last name. And like just the fact that there's like a computer related company that uses web in its name in 1983 was like, oh, okay, that is a little bit of a premonition.
Yeah, happy accident there, seems like.
The accountant, I guess, who discovers Gus Gorman's scheme tells Webster, in the old days, it was simple. We had books, we had ledgers, we knew what was going in and what was paid out. If someone wanted to rob you, they'd have to come in with a gun and say, stick 'em up. Now they've got their blasted computers to do their dirty work. Like, no lies detected there. Certainly how it goes in the 21st century. And then at one point, I believe it's Ross that says, this is a bar mic. The fella that can rule the computer can rule the world. Again, that is shockingly accurate, 40 plus years on from this film. I think that's exactly right. I think about it a lot, man. The fella
Very,
that can rule the computer can rule the world.
very advanced stuff coming from Superman 3.
Deep stuff.
Whoever wrote this must have been modern day Nostradamus.
David and Leslie Newman, man. Crazy. They saw it all. All right, so let's talk about the new characters introduced in this movie. Most of them are villains. Gus Gorman, we both decided is a villain negligibly. He's antagonizes Superman, even if he's not a true bad guy, let's say. It's just crazy to me that like this guy is good at computers and now he has actual godlike powers over the weather, over the infrastructure as it relates to ATM machines. He hacks into one and it gives this guy a bunch of money, which is something we've seen in a million movies, I feel like, at this point. I don't know if Superman 3 was the first to do that, but if so, a lot of plot points in movies about ATM machines on the fritz from computer hacking.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
That also causes Bloomingdale's to send out an incorrect balance on their credit cards. Now, I have to assume this was a fast forward because the guy is getting his balance in the mail. So this must have been weeks after Gus's hacking job. But he smashes a grapefruit into his wife's face after he sees the credit card. Mike, what are we, Mike, what are we doing, man? I mean,
Women are not treated well in this movie.
what are we doing here, dude? Smashing a grapefruit into your wife's face? Like, this is the lowest level of comedy. Ugh, ugh. There's some cringy moments throughout this film. That one among the cringiest. And then, okay, you can mess with stoplights and crosswalks. The actual avatars in the crosswalks start fighting each other. Like, oh, buddy.
Painful.
Excruciating stuff here. Just excruciating. So I did not really care for Gus Gorman as a character construct. It is deeply, deeply painful to say that Richard Pryor is just not funny in this movie. It's not really his fault, but like they're making a guy like fall off a skyscraper on skis and ski down like the slope side and land in the street. They just don't set him up to do Richard Pryor good stuff. The scene with him getting Brad drunk and that it just feels like it goes on forever. None of it's really funny. When he's the general giving Superman the kryptonite, again,
What was
like
that speech about? Chemicals. Like, why did he give this whole speech only to then just turn around and be like, okay, the point I'm here is to give Superman synthetic kryptonite. I didn't understand any of that.
I guess again in a generous rating of this, it was him making a satirical argument about the importance of plastic in American society, but like no one is into plastic, man. Like plastic is the worst. It's like one of maybe arguably the biggest problem in America when it comes from an environmental and just plastic is terrible what it's done for our country. Like, is this supposed to be ironic? Like, I did not
I
understand the plastic speech.
I really wonder if Richard Lester was just like, okay, Richard, you're to talk about this, and the note I'm going to give you is be funny. Just go be funny. And he's just like, I okay, like I don't have any context for this scene. We're probably shooting it out of sequence. Like, I
Totally.
don't know what's going on. I don't have a good script. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. He's very out of place in this movie. Just the most famous comedian in the world at the time. Let's just put him in.
It's rough. And we could talk about this a little bit now, I guess, but you know, it's difficult to marry comic book and superhero with comedy. I mean, that is something that has been challenging in the past, but the thing is, with a few exceptions, and arguably even really one major exception being Thor Ragnarok, which is obviously a great film, you just want some jokes in your superhero movies. You don't want a hybrid comedy and superhero movie, you know? And this really, really tries hard to be a comedy. And it's just, again, like you can maybe pull it off, but most of the time when that going for that tone, it's just a really difficult balancing act and just ill conceived to put Richard Pryor. Apparently, they had heard him on Johnny Carson talking about how much he enjoyed the first two Superman movies, and that was why they were like, let's put him in our movie. Because, Mike, I was going to talk about this a little bit later, but we can get into it now too. The character of Gus Gorman was written to be the human alias of Brainiac, who then comes in and builds the supercomputer for the final battle. Now, to me, that all makes sense. You got a guy that's pretending to be a human and he pulls these little schemes. He has no problem being amoral, wreaking havoc on Columbia and whatnot. And you've got, the Brainiac canon character, one of his notable villains in the film. Instead, there is no one from Superman canon in this film outside of, I guess, like, the supporting office characters and Lana Lang. So you just end up with, we can transition to this now. Robert Vaughn is Ross Webster, like one of the most bland and generic, I'm just an unscrupulous billionaire. I mean,
I think it was originally supposed to be Lex Luthor again, though, right?
it feels like that was how the character was conceived for sure. And apparently, what I read was that this movie did actually influence the way that the Lex Luthor character was portrayed in DC moving forward, that he was a little bit more of a criminal mastermind and kind of a devious schemer, a la Gene Hackman. And then with this portrayal of Ross Webster, even though he wasn't canonical in DC Comics, they were like, oh, what if we make him more of like a rich billionaire business guy and like Luthor Corp and all of this. I could be wrong on that, and please, listeners, let us know in the comments. But apparently, yeah, like it did actually have an influence on the way that Lex Luthor was portrayed moving forward, even if Ross Webster himself never became part of comics canon. It's definitely was supposed to be Gene Hackman, but they couldn't get him because he was mad because Richard Donner had gotten fired, and so that's the rumor at least. Now his sister Annie Ross as Vera Webster, really bad, poorly treated, always making jokes about how she looks like a man and she's not good looking. Just what do you want? I mean, it's just awful. Everyone's awful to her, not compelling in any way.
Yeah, she reminds me of Frau Farbissina from Austin Powers, just like the way that she dresses and her hairstyle and everything, and just the serious nature of her persona. I saw a lot of Frau Farbissina in that role.
100%, you're spot on with that comparison. Pamela Stevenson as Lorelei Ambrosia, in my opinion, may be the best part of this whole movie. Not only is she actually kind of funny in her comic relief parts, she certainly has this seductive quality to get Superman to be that, but she's secretly smart and she's not fully morally compromised. Like Gus, she's not super down for the plan. She starts to feel bad at the end. She doesn't like it. She's obviously taken advantage of by jerk Superman, so I kind of feel a sense of pity for her. And losing her virginity before marriage is just an awful, awful thing to happen.
I think,
Um,
and I could see this being Miss Tessmacher from the first two, and so since they recast Lex Luthor now as Webster, they've had to recast his sexy female assistant too, and that would have made more sense with her character arc over the three movies had it been Miss Tessmacher because she was already in love with Superman and tried to kiss him, as we talked about. So now that he finally breaks bad and sleeps with her, it's like that makes a lot more sense for that character's arc over the course of the three movies, I feel like.
Totally agree. Funny thing, the actress Pamela Stevenson, who plays Lorelai, really interesting life story. After Superman 3, she was on Saturday Night Live for one season, actually. One of the only internationally born. She is like British, New Zealand. One of the only, yeah, international cast members of Saturday Night Live, 1 year on SNL. Gave up acting in the early 90s and went on to become a psychologist, married the Scottish comedian Billy Connolly, and has written like multiple books on like psychology and sex and has hosted shows in the UK. She's had a really fascinating life and career. And maybe I'm just kind of crazy about, like I said, this just woman's amazing life all around. But yeah, Pamela Stevenson, props to you. You did a good job in Superman 3.
Secretly smart.
Secretly smart, just like
Yeah.
Lorelai Ambrosia. How about that? All right, now we got to talk about Brad. Brad, the bum F from Smallville. I hated him, Mike. I absolutely hated him. I hated him all the way through the movie. And then his little stinger at the end, where he is apparently stalked Lana Lang and her kid all the way to Metropolis and is like, I hate you, Clark, because you're a nice guy, and takes a drunken swing at him. And Clark just knocks him into a cart and shoots him off into the elevator. Everything about Brad and his character sucked. I'm sorry. Rest in peace, Gavin O'Harley. Gavin O'Harley. He's an Irish American actor who passed away a few years ago. Not his fault, bad character, but Brad, man, not a great addition in this film.
I don't know what they were going for here. Like, he doesn't have any redeeming moment or anything. He's just a sad sack the whole way through.
And I really hate to say this, Mike, because I don't like to just crap on people, but it was rough for Annette O'Toole in this one, man. I felt no chemistry between her and Clark. I kind of feel like she's playing this like her character is so ill-defined. She's just kind of leading him on a little bit, but not like flirting with him overtly. She just seems disengaged. Annette O'Toole is married to the great Michael McKean in real life, and so both the two of the female leads have gone on to awesome lives where they married great comedians. Also interesting about Annette O'Toole, she ends up playing Martha Kent on Smallville for 10 seasons. So it was kind of a full circle moment for her in that show. And she's actually quite good in that show as Martha. But man, I really struggle with Lana Lang. And again, I think it's just her character is just badly defined.
Yeah, she's just single mom archetype, basically. And she is willing to probably be with Clark, but she's also cooking dinner for Superman. I've just, again, women do not get portrayed well in this movie. I think it's like the idea here is, and I hate this, but it's like she's the desperate single mom trying to find a new husband kind of thing.
Kind of
Not a good look.
kind of feels that way. Yeah. She has enough integrity to not get with Brad at least, so I'll give her that. Not a ton of callbacks in this movie. Our next category. However, a couple Easter eggs. I don't know if you caught it. They're playing Rollover Beethoven at the high school reunion. That was obviously a Beatles song, or the version they're playing is the Beatles song. Richard Lester directed the Beatles movies. There you go, little Easter egg.
I did want to call out specifically this movie plays Earth Angel at a high school dance 2 years prior to Back to the Future.
Excellent call is there. However, some people have noted that was a 50s hit. So it's super weird that they're playing a 50s hit at the 1965 reunion. Doesn't really make a lot of sense musically, but maybe that was like Smallville was so far behind the times they were just getting hip to like early Beatles and Earth Angel in the mid 60s. Did you catch the part where they're about to go down into the canyon and they're all doing the balloon chair things and they say, "Hey, you should come with us," and he says, "No, I just don't believe a man can fly."
I think I didn't, yeah, catch it at the time, but I forgot about it quickly.
Clock that little Easter egg there. And then one thing I do think is kind of cool. This is our fourth Superman movie we've talked about, including Superman Returns from 2006. Each and every one of those movies ends with a shot of Superman flying into outer space. That's just kind of cool. That each Superman movie. I'm curious to see if that continues this summer. We'll see. But
Yeah.
yeah, something I noticed. All right, now let's discuss in this movie how well does Clark Kent hide his secret identity as Superman? And Mike, I think this is his worst job yet. A lot of criticisms around that. He obviously reveals himself to Lois in Superman 2, but how can Lana Lang not put it together 2 seconds after Superman saves her son from a thresher? First of all, why is he even hanging out in Smallville, Kansas, when he's from Metropolis and everyone knows it? Second of all, you just had this dude in front of your face, and 2 seconds later, Clark Kent comes out. Oh, look, I found the dog. He was hiding. He is basically trying to tell you right there that he is Superman. It is atrocious that no one can actually identify Clark in this movie. Really frustrating
Oh,
me.
well, I'll talk to Superman for you. He's a real good friend of mine. Just
Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
groan. Are you kidding me?
Really bothered me. All right, so I thought we would save our death toll count to the collateral damage section. So this is actually a relatively non-violent Superman movie, I would say, at least compared to the first two, where there's, earthquakes that take out entire states and just a completely destruct, Metropolis getting destroyed with the battle on Kryptonians. Not a ton of stuff, but I did want to float this by you. There's power outage from the Ultimate Computer. Over half the country gets plunged into darkness. I gotta think that at a minimum, we're talking dozens of deaths from, oh my God, oh, I'm in an elevator, it loses power, or I don't know. The death toll seemingly is low key, and it certainly is relative to the first two Superman movies. But what are your thoughts? How many people died? You got any guesses?
I would say dozens, maybe the low side of the hundreds, just because of the hurricane. We don't know how catastrophic that ended up being, what class of hurricane it may have been caused by that pesky satellite digital beam that penetrated the clouds and created that. So I would say, high dozens, low hundreds, that somewhere in that range.
Sounds right. Sounds about right. That's a good call. Can't forget about the Colombians. That's my bad. All right, Mike. Now is the part of the show where we discuss what are the deeper themes of the movie in the section we call What's It All About, really? Now, to me, Mike, it's clear that Superman 3 is making a trenchant satire of Ronald Reagan's policies in the early 80s and its effect on the working class. We see the opening scene of the film itself is Gus Gorman, who's long-term unemployment, suffering cruelly at the hands of a callously indifferent unemployment officer. Not only do the villains of this movie work in business, but they control everything in cartels, from the price of coffee to the distribution of oil to America. There's a rant about plastics given by Richard Pryor, as we discussed. And the most trenchant and telling scene to me, Mike, is a moment in a diner after a man is beaten to a pulp outside of a gas pump. The camera pans in, and a man says, "Somebody's behind this. You can't tell me there's no oil. And you can't tell me someone's not getting rich off this. Someone's always getting rich. And you know who suffers? The small guy." Mike, we may have laughed at this film. We may have been disgusted by this film at times. Certainly the premarital sex that Superman engaged in, deeply upsetting to me. But you can't tell me this isn't a really powerful condemnation of the devastating economic policies of one Ronald Reagan. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, still problems that we're dealing with today. All these, the billionaires controlling everything.
What?
And
No, Mike, stop. What
oh
are you
wait,
talking about? Mike, come on.
are we are we,
Elon? I
are
mean,
we pro? Is this
we
a
have
pro
good
Elon
billionaires
podcast?
now. I won't hear this slander. Okay, there's nothing about that I just said was relevant to nowadays. This is Ronald Reagan
Hey
he was
man,
criticizing,
I
man.
think.
You have a
It's
better class of billionaire in 2025, bro. Come on.
I man, I don't agree with that, unfortunately. But, maybe the freezing the lake and having it slowly melt over the chemical plant was a metaphor for trickle down economics. I mentioned it earlier, but Gus does have that speech about, he just wants to get his, and it's really hard when the system is designed to have someone like him fail. And, this is a man who, at the beginning of the film, he's frustrated over how difficult it is to be a fast food worker, and somehow he's able to naturally be gifted at coding and early BIOS screens, things like that. So I don't really know how that works, but yeah, I think you may be right there. It's a timeless message about how billionaires and politicians control everything and how it sucks.
Again, in the 80s, Mike, not nowadays. I cannot emphasize this enough. None of what we are saying is relevant to anything in 2025. We have benevolent leadership in the White House and in the billionaire class.
What we
Thank you
need is
very
a is
much.
an illegal immigrant to come from another planet and fight our billionaires for us. One who's been gifted to us from the heavens.
Love it. Now it's time for our favorite section of the show. This is a section we call I've Got Questions. And boy, Mike, I would imagine we both have some questions around this movie. Why don't you kick us off with your first question?
Oh my God, where do I start? Okay, I'm just looking at my notes, and the first thing that pops out at me is he can just use his super breath to blow the oil back inside the tanker by itself. Like, wouldn't it be diluted from the seawater? Wouldn't it have been ruined? This made zero sense to me. How does he do this? Mark, explain.
Apparently, he can put toothpaste back in the tube too if he has the ability to put oil
Exactly.
back in a tanker. I mean, this is like it's almost like a metaphor. Like you can't put the oil back in the tanker from Exxon Valdez. Everyone says that all the time, and yet he did it. Doesn't make sense.
My next question is that the villains are monologuing a little bit, and they're kind of twirling their mustaches as they say, "Oh, we've set a master trap for him up here at the Grand Canyon." They don't know at this point that Superman hasn't turned back from being a jerk. So why are they setting a trap for him? A, if they think that the synthetic kryptonite has worked on him permanently, unless B, they somehow know that it would have eventually worn off, and so we have to set a trap for him.
Brilliant point. Hadn't even thought about that one. That is an absolutely brilliant, brilliant point.
Thank you. How does Richard Pryor know? I'm going backwards in time here, in my notes, but how does Richard Pryor know that Superman is going to be in Smallville at that exact moment, receiving an award or the key to the city, for him to roll up in a Jeep dressed as a general to hand him the synthetic kryptonite? Like, was this weeks later? Had it been planned? Had it been mentioned in the news for a long time? Like, it seemed like it was just like, oh, we're going to do an impromptu key to the
Yeah,
city giving session,
he
and then he just kind of rolls up there.
yeah, he was kind of hiding out in Smallville, but I guess that actually takes place after he goes back to Metropolis after the whole Smallville thing. So yeah, there's a lot of getting a lot of frequent flyer mileage getting out to Smallville from Metropolis. Great point.
And then we've talked about other things like why is there a giant pool of acid in the junkyard, and why can the supercomputer be disconnected by one single screw? I don't know.
A lot of there's we could go on for days, but I got a few of my own here. The first one that really bothers me. So Gus pulls off this brilliant scheme, frankly, and they're even like, we're never going to catch this guy, unless he's a total idiot. He buys a cherry red Ferrari, blasts all the music, and not only that, it gets a conspicuous brand new car. He doesn't park it in a parking spot. He just leaves it in the middle of the parking lot, like where they're going to have to tow it anyway. Gus, come on, dude. Come on. Let's not do that.
I want to share a personal story that relates to that,
Please.
which is that when people get a lot of money, they often don't know what to do with it and they make dumb decisions. And my ultimate case in point is my neighbor across the street who apparently was doing some very shady things involving drugs and money. I won't go into the details, but the way that they caught him was that he bought too many motorcycles, and it looked way too suspicious. And so the cops ended up doing a deep dive into his finances, figuring out that he had all this illegal money that he wasn't supposed to have, and raided the place. And he no longer lives across the street from me.
Well, I stand corrected then. First thing idiot criminals do apparently is spend way too much money on vehicles. I thought the scene where Superman helps the kid at the bowling alley, very sweet moment. Good job, Superman. But the kid doesn't just like get a strike. He destroys the entire lane. They're now liable for serious damages to that bowling alley. The cops are getting involved probably. Superman's getting sued. The family's getting sued. Like help the kid, Superman, but don't like destroy the whole lane. Like that's not even going to be realistic. Just give him a strike, man. Like it's a little bit of overkill. This has come up, but like okay, so you're Superman. You're at a an event where you're being honored and they give you this gift that looks exactly like kryptonite. And in fact, actually turns out to be kind of like the cracked version of of kryptonite. Why are you even saying yes to this weird rock to begin with? What are you doing? It's like if you had a peanut allergy and they're like, for your gift, we're going to give you a big bag of pan nuts. And it's like, no, it's not peanuts. Let me just eat a couple of these pan nuts. I'm sure I'll be fine, even though I have a peanut allergy. What are you doing, Superman? Just kick that shit into the sun, man. I mean, get it
You
out of
think
there
he'd be
immediately.
more wary of like any kind of green rock, emerald, jade, what have you. He's get all that away from me.
Seriously, just all of it. Okay, this is kind of a basic one, but just knowing what we know about computer technology, why are you building the ultimate computer in the base of a canyon? You're not going to get any signal down there. I mean, I guess it's away from spying eyes, but like that is probably one of the worst places you could build a supercomputer would be in the earth at the bottom of a canyon with rocks falling all over the place and dust and all. What are you doing building it there? Terrible. This one really bothered me, Mike, because they get to the ultimate computer and Vera says, "Oh, I know enough about computers to put a PhD to shame," and then immediately starts operating the computer within this masterful level. If she's such a computer genius, why did they ever need Gus Gorman in the first place? They should have just been like having her execute all the schemes. If she, suddenly she just knows all the computers. You don't even need the Gus Gorman character at that point. It's terrible.
That's a great point. I hadn't thought of
Terrible.
that.
Okay.
The only reason is because she's secretly smart and didn't reveal that she could do that until the end.
I mean, I guess you could say it's for like, oh, well, we didn't know he was just doing all this stuff and their hands are clean. But like, come on, man. This one also bothers me, Mike. I mean, there is no story in Superman's I went back to my high school reunion. He literally goes back and is like, the best looking girl in high school is still the best looking girl at the reunion. Lois Lane, who's in this movie for two scenes, is very conspicuously absent from this film. Is like, I loved your story, Clark. That was so good. It's like, no, it wasn't. There's no way that was a good story. Like, you went back to Smallville and wrote about your high school reunion and you got your editor to send you out there? Like,
Yeah, I had a
what?
big problem with this. This is not major metropolitan news worthy. And again, he's clearly using his position to try and get laid because he's writing about how beautiful Lana is, and he knows that she's going to read that. Like,
100%.
this is it's a horrible, horrible story. I don't know what they were thinking with this.
Yeah, I would not read that at all. So, and then, we kind of touched on it before, but you have so many opportunities to just make one of these characters Brainiac, including even at the end when she turns into like a metal machine, they could have been like, they had it come one scene before, and she's like, oh no, it's taken me over. I feel like some kind of Brainiac,
Yeah,
like it was all right there, real missed opportunity to include some iconic villains in this film, which leads us to our final verdict, Mike. Now, I think it's pretty clear that we're not going to dub this a classic or even a great movie. What's on the table? Good, okay, bad, or terrible, I think is the range that we're looking for. I don't even think we're going to go good. So we're really on our bottom three here. Mike, why don't you render your final verdict and I'll render mine. Go ahead.
I'm going bad. I think this is a bad movie. There are things about it that I can talk myself into liking as we've done here today, but overall, I would not recommend this movie. I think I was wise to avoid it for the first 38 years of my life, and I think it's bad.
You know what, Mike? I totally agree. And it got me thinking about a distinction between terrible and bad. And I think that distinction lies in the fact that bad movies are kind of watchable because they're bad and so you can laugh at the movies, whereas terrible movies you just want to just stop it, like you don't want to put it back on. There's no ironic enjoyment. This movie has enough unintentional comedy that you could go to like a live like mystery science theater screening of it and like just have comedians just roast the entire movie and it would be entertaining. So it doesn't reach the threshold of terrible. It is merely bad, but boy, that is a bad movie. Our final segment of our show is when we recommend something connected to the film we just saw. So, Mike, why don't you kick us off this week?
I'll start with my comic recommendation. I mentioned how the Superman versus Superman reminded me a lot of a Bizarro fight, and how we haven't seen that on screen yet, and that's probably the closest we'll get, unless James Gunn brings it in a sequel or whatever. But when I think of Bizarro, there's specifically a scene within the comic Justice, which was illustrated by the legendary Alex Ross, that where multiple villains are fighting Superman at one time, including Bizarro, and so I'm going to use that for my comic recommendation. And then for movie recommendation, I have two. The first is that if you're a youngster out there listening to this podcast and you need some kind of understanding as to why Richard Pryor was cast in this movie, I would go with Richard Pryor Live in Concert, which came out, I think, 2 years before, if I'm not mistaken. It's definitely a hard R of a watch, but it will help you understand why he was so famous at the time, because he was really the only comedian at the time who had something like that out to the masses, and it really put him on the map, and it's good context for why he's in this movie. The other movie I wanted to just give a brief shout out to, and this is because it's all I can think about whenever I see Robert Vaughn, is Trey Parker and Matt Stone's movie Basketball, and him just constantly hitting on Jenny McCarthy the entire time is just so funny to me, and his creepy voice, and it's all I can think of when he was on screen in this movie.
Nice. Basketball reference. You gotta love that. That's awesome. I got a couple film recommendations, one of which we've already alluded to a little bit, and that's Office Space. As you mentioned, they call out Superman 3 as the scheme in this movie. And it's funny because I do think the Office Space is a little bit dated just based on the time that it came out and how different office culture is now compared to how it was then. Maybe it's, maybe not. I don't know.
Completely disagree. I think it's
Okay.
exactly the same.
It's actually been a little while. Maybe it's more the restaurant stuff that's dated than it is the office stuff. But in any event, one of my favorite comedies. Absolutely love that film. Mike Judge is, I think, a comedic genius, and this was his first feature length film before Idiocracy, which is now, I think, considered a cult classic. Yeah, just a really great film. Came out, I think it was before I was going into the office, but heavily influenced a lot of us in our lives and the way that we approach our jobs if we work in an office, which I may or may not. So, the other one I want to shout out, and this is a little bit of a deeper cut for Richard Pryor fans, because I just learned that he co wrote the 1974 comedy classic Blazing Saddles. That's the film that he won the Writers Guild Award for Best Screenplay for. He was supposed to be in the main role, but there's a lot of rumors as to why that didn't happen. Some people think it was Mel Brooks being jealous of Richard Pryor's success and not wanting to take away from his own comedic genius. Other people, including Mel Brooks, have said that studio executives could not insure Richard Pryor because he was such a volatile personality. So that was why they had to go with a different actor. In any event, his fingerprints are all over Blazing Saddles because that movie, Mike, is incredibly dark and really edgy. Even watching it, I was absolutely cringing through a lot of it. There's a lot of racial jokes in this movie that may or may not be of one's taste. That's completely understandable. It's a 50-year-old comedy film and things have changed for sure. At the same time, the message of the movie is unmistakable, and that is that racism is completely dumb and stupid. And in that respect, I am going to go on record right now to say, yes, I totally agree. Racism is dumb and stupid, and Blazing Saddles does an excellent job of skewering that. It also has one of the most clever comedy endings of all time. I had kind of forgotten about how there's sort of a fourth wall break at the end of the movie. It goes completely over the top. Really great, considered one of the true comedy classics of the 1970s. So if you haven't seen it, highly recommend Blazing Saddles.
It's very brave of you to take a stand against racism.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, I just want to really let people know I'm against it in all shapes and forms. I do not abide prejudice. Well, that'll do it for this week's episode. Thanks so much for tuning into Superhero Cinema Club. This was a fun one. It was our first bad movie we've had to do, Mike.
Yeah, I expect next week will be something similar. We'll see.
We'll see. Next episode, we're going to be tackling the Razzie-nominated, Razzie-winning Supergirl, a spin-off of Superman that I think I saw once when I was like 7 years old and have completely forgotten about. So we'll see how Supergirl goes, but good or bad, we'll be there to talk about it, share our feelings.
I can't wait. It's going to be a fun one. I actually am looking forward to seeing something I've never seen before. And, I didn't even know this movie existed until you said we were going to do it. So,
Supergirl on next episode of Superhero Cinema Club. Thanks everyone for listening. We'll see you next week.
Superhero Cinema Club is hosted by Mark Schiff and me, Mike Carnes. Produced by Mark Schiff. Editing by Mike Carnes. Original music provided by Chris Carnes. Find him on Spotify. Be sure to follow us on social media. You can find us at Superhero Cinema Club, and don't forget to like and subscribe and leave a review. Join us next time as we dive into another epic adventure from the world of superhero cinema.